Hi and welcome to the Ruby Tuesday. My name is Ruben and this is my review for Netflix's original TV series, Assassins. It dropped today, there's 10 episodes, they're each 45 minutes long. And before I jump into the review, I want to ask you a question. Which is your favorite martial arts TV series or film? I have loads: Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Jet Li's The One, anything with the raid in it because I love those films, but let me know in the comments below.
I've been looking for you, Kai.
So, Assassins follows a protagonist named Kai. He's on the mission to save Chinatown. He's imbued with the power of 1,000 monks, as you see in the first episode. He needs to defeat his father, and it's kung fu meets science fiction fantasy, kind of, in the mixed with street food, because he's a chef, and chefs do that.
Chefs do that.
I'm going to put my hands up and say that if you don't like this series, that's totally fine, because I am biased when it comes to martial art films and martial art TV. One of my favorite TV series of late is Into the Badlands. There was 3 seasons of that, and that's high-flying wire work and close martial arts action, hand-to-hand combat fighting, and it's drama, and I just loved it. And it was recently cancelled, so I needed something to sate my martial art desire, and this is filling that gap. Whilst watching this, if you're watching the martial arts and you're saying to yourself, I recognize some of the choreography work, well, 2 of the episodes that are directed in this series, the director from Into the Badlands, who directed a few of those episodes, has directed the choreography and the whole episode, so you may get the similar feeling. Anyway, back to the review. I can't help but think that when people were approached to do this series, the main criteria was, do you fight good? Can you fight? Do you have martial arts skills? Do you know Krav Maga, Taekwondo, Jiu-Jitsu, all of that? That is definitely the top criteria. And then comes, can you act? Can you sing? Can you dance? Can you do dialogue? Can you hit the mark? Because the best thing about this is definitely the martial arts. Unfortunately, the dialogue, as I was saying earlier, is quite cringy in parts. And I'm not sure if that's to do with the actual accents, because some of the accents from the actors they're speaking in English, so their accents are really thick. And sometimes I found it really hard to understand what they were saying. I wanted to pause and go back. I even looked to see if this was the original language, if English was the original language that they intended to film it in. And it is, so it is for an English audience, but sometimes I felt like I needed subtitles. But that's just me. Maybe you'll understand it perfectly, but I think that does take away a little bit from the 10 episodes, that if you're finding it difficult to understand what they're saying, then maybe you're just watching for the action sequences, which is okay, because if you know the lead actor, Uwais, this guy, then you know he does martial arts really well. That when it comes to martial arts, there aren't many other people in the world that are as good as him on film in hand-to-hand combat, close action sequences, choreographed sequences that can go on for ages, and the camera allows you space to see what's going on. For me, in Hollywood, that is one of the worst things you can do. In fast-paced, well, I'm spitting at the camera, fast-paced editing to kind of justify that there isn't a decent enough action sequence here, but you edit fast and then you justify going, well, look how crazy this is, cut. But here they allow space and time to see the fighting, which is great. And you'll notice other actors as well in there. For me, I was like, Mark Dukakis. If you grew up in my time frame, which is really ancient of days, the 80s and 90s, then you'll notice that Mark Dukakis, if you're a fan of martial art films growing up, watching Kickboxer, Time Cop, all of the Van Damme martial art films, then Mark Dukakis would have cropped up in some of those films. One of my favorites is Drive. If you watched that when you were growing up, when you were a little boy, when you're watching that, you will know how good he is. You might have seen him recently in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I was very disappointed with him in that, not because he wasn't great, because he didn't do any martial arts in that. And so in this, he is one of the faces of the monks, and I'm still not sure he's doing martial arts because it swaps and changes quite quickly, but Mark Dukakis. Who doesn't love Mark Dukakis?
The original 5 Fingers of Death right here.
Incidentally, don't go back and watch Drive now because it hasn't aged well. For the 10 episodes, it's very basic, I would say. That these kind of stories have been done a lot. It's triads going to war, it's cops trying to stop them, and in the monks that you have magic wizards. They're not magic wizards, but it's kind of leaning that way. You know, 1,000 monks and powers, and the dad has like flaming balls out of his hands, and more of that does come. And there's the two parts ending, part 1 and part 2, that really kind of wraps up the big arc that they want to do. And I don't know if you want more of this, but if you're into kind of fantasy martial arts series, then you're probably, the story will probably be pushed to the side for you. You'll be in it for the martial arts action. I don't think the story is very strong, and I think the dialogue is at times cheesy. And one of the worst things about this series is possibly the special effects. There's this place where our main character gets dragged to, like a fantasy realm, for him to train with the monks and learn about his superpowers. And it looks okay, but when they're doing when they're doing water dragons and flaming things and water twirls and big rocks, and he's punching all these rocks, there are times it looks really bad.
Oh, whoa, okay.
There are places where the CG looks okay, and you can kind of go, ugh, okay, that, you know, that's possible. The soundtrack / score was very interesting. It's very on the nose almost when it's to do with triads and martial arts. They've gone for the almost R&B heavy synth auto-tuned sound, and immediately in myself I'm gonna go, that doesn't work. But actually it did kind of work. It was kind of fun. There were these instrumental tones that would sometimes lead into the song, which I thought worked quite well. Who you gonna call? I remember mentioning to my wife when there was one scene that with the cinematography with a pan sliding shot. I know we're getting into actual filming techniques, but I thought it looked really pretty. The night shooting was particularly good. There's one shot that's just kind of slid by, and then they had the sound come in and it went into its score music track, and I thought, that works really well. And so I think as a whole it fits quite well. I wouldn't go and buy the album or the soundtrack, but I think they did its job. So that's my 2 cents on sound and music. I think if you go into this with your eyes open, you'll enjoy it because you'll know what you're getting into. Don't try and take it too seriously. It's just a fun action martial arts series. If you like Into the Badlands, then you'll know what you're getting into. There isn't a lot of wire work in this, but it has a similar tempo and tone. Obviously different era, I guess. But this, I thought, is fun. So go in with that kind of mindset and I think you'll enjoy it. One thing that I thought was interesting is the age rating. So there's quite a bit of violence, like stabbing, and there's some swearing. But it used to be, especially with the BBC FC rating, wow. It used to be that, in the UK, that you would get an immediate 18 if you saw needles and injection. There was this scene where to do with drugs, and you see a person pull out the needle, and that used to get an immediate 18. I just thought it was interesting that this was a 15. Got nothing to do with the series really. It's just that I was commenting on it being a 15 now, how with some things we just get lower and lower. I wonder what you thought about the kind of what you can put in a TV series now, what you can get away with, and whether age restrictions even need to be applied anymore. Is it down to the individual? I'd love to know what you think on that. This was actually quite a tricky one to give a rating for because, as you know, I like my martial arts. And I think that the lead in this is one of the best martial artists we have around. So I think for martial arts, it would get an A. But because of the CG and the story and the lack of dialogue, or just the way it's portrayed, it doesn't come across in the best way, I would give this a D. So I'm going to kind of meet it kind of in the middle and give it a C+. I was going to go for a B-, but I still think it's in the C+ range if you take all of that into account. I want to give it higher because the lover of martial art films and TV series wants to go, no, give it an A+, but it's really not in that genre. I've got to look at it as a whole. So please don't be offended, but that's where I think it belongs, in the C-, C+. In the C+ range. Let me know in the comments below what's your favorite martial art film or series. Let me know in the comments below also whether you enjoyed this. And most of all, until next time, remember, live long and Tuesday.